Hi, this is David Gornoski, host of A Neighbor's Choice and Things Hidden podcast, as well as some of our other programs like Science and You with our Chief Science Advisor, Dr. Yu, and our Seed Oil Survival series that we continue to have great fun unpacking the truth of nutrition. I wanted to give you a quick little message saying we appreciate all the support that we get from our monthly contributors and our one-time donation supporters. And we'd encourage all of you to go to our website, aneighborschoice.com, click on contribute, and make a monthly pledge today, whether it's $1, $5, 15, 20, 50, whatever you want to do. Doesn't matter. Just be a part of building this new media project that we've developed to empower and inform, to inspire, to kickstart a scientific renaissance, an anthropological breakthrough and reformation in the church. All these things are possible with your support right now. So make that commitment today and help us keep doing the productions that we have. Thank you.
Welcome back to Good Money here on Money Talk 1010. I'm your host, Tho Bishop. So joining us here on this Thursday morning is a good friend of mine, no stranger to the Tampa airwaves, the host of A Neighbor's Choice, one of my very favorite podcasts out there. You can find him on Rumble, a variety of podcast platforms, or at aneighborschoice.com, and that is David Gornoski. David, how you doing today?
Good. How you doing, sir?
Doing great. Always glad to talk with you. Usually I'm on the other side of the mic here, so it's great to have you on this show. And we started off today, I wanted to look at some of the ways in which the macroeconomic issues that we cover a lot in the show, when we think about, Federal Reserve, we think about fiat banking, we think about large scale, different changes to incentives that we get from all aspects of the state and how it relates to the food that we consume. And I know that you are someone who has done a tremendous amount of work on some of the consequences of the way that different incentives that the government has placed has led to different choices on the market, some of the health consequences of that. And that's, of course, a big dynamic to this is that the food options that we have have a direct connection to the healthcare costs of this country. It goes into, there's so many aspects that everything can be wrapped back down here in food. And so can you talk a little bit about your work and, what are some of the biggest issues that you see out there with the way that the economic incentives the state has created has resulted in some of these consequences that a lot of people might not be aware of in terms of the American food supply?
Yeah, well, you talk about the term fiat food, which is food made out of nothing, created out of thin air, and that's exactly what has dominated the American food system for so long, since the arrival of things like industrial vegetable oils. You may have heard them as seed oils if you're online, but for the vast majority of those listening, you've come to know them as vegetable oils. That's canola, corn, soybean, safflower, sunflower, cottonseed oil, rape seed oil, all these different products, and a variety of others, corn oil, I don't know if I said that one. These are all toxic seed oil, rancid products. They weren't meant to be food, and humans in the 1900s started slowly figuring out how to defraud the public. At first, they started it with cottonseed oil. After the Civil War, they realized that the byproduct from cottonseed, or that you could produce an oil that you could adulterate and defraud the customer by lacing it into your butter, so you didn't have to have as much butter in the food that you sold, and that was considered a very shameful product. But with enough PR and enough corporate largesse behind these products and government support, eventually the United States government began to take these toxic, rancid, highly inflammatory non-food items and subsidize them and get them recommended into our food system today. And we've, ever since they've been adopted, we've slowly, well, not slowly, but really skyrocketed in our diabetes, in our heart disease, our metabolic dysfunction, all the different things that are related to issues that you or someone you know has are related to this catastrophic mistake of us listening to government, which subsidized these toxic waste products and got us to believe that they were food. And it started with a guy named Ansel Keys, who would be, in the economic fans' terms, he would be the John Maynard Keynes of nutritional science, right? So he's the big fraudster who's kickstarted so much of what has gone wrong in the nutrition field, just like Keynes has continued to loom large over so many of the huge fraud mistakes in economics today from your standpoint in the Austrian school that you share. So that's the starting point, is that government has subsidized these extremely cheap, extremely toxic, and they're not just toxic for because they basically kill the mitochondria, which are your batteries in your cells. So when you have diabetes and other diseases, these are an effect of what happens when you're shutting down the energy cells, the energy batteries in your little cells. Your cells are not able to thrive. They're not able to fight off diseases. They're not able to stay young and vibrant and high energy the more you shut down their energy sources in the form of running. It's basically running a toxic fuel source through that battery in your cell, the mitochondria. And so that's the first huge starting point. And then the second one, of course, is that, at the same time that we have subsidized these monocrop, mass industrial seed oil productions to be, soybean, that's so much of the farmland has been converted for the use of industrial seed oil. We have also, abandoned and made it very difficult for local farmers to directly distribute highly nutritionally dense food to their local communities.
Yeah, no, all of that is, there's such a fascinating history there, and it's always interesting. You can see the same sort of beats kind of play out, I think, with a lot of the big scale problems that we have in this country. A lot of usually there's some sort of FDR connection. Usually there's something that picks up in the 60s. Usually there's you add in the changes into the dollar and the way that creates incentives particularly after the 1970s and things like that. There's so many dynamics here in which these large scale macro problems have such a repeating pattern with the way that we've seen the buildup of the administrative state, the buildup of the federal government that we so know and love today. These patterns of massive increases, and one of the things you mentioned is the degree to which it is the direct result of very targeted subsidies to specific crops, to particular areas of agricultural production that leads to this massive demand. Okay, well, we are subsidizing more corn. We are subsidizing the production of these select crops, and therefore we have to find uses for these select crops. Government creates a situation. They have to find solutions for it, and of course, at the end of the day, it is certain special interests that financially benefit from it, and it's the consumers that end up being the ones having to navigate and deal with the consequences on what is offered in the marketplace. And so people will blame out there, this is the consequences of capitalism. This is the consequences of, whatever their particular boogeyman is. If you don't connect it right back to the fact that there are deliberate policy decisions that have influenced and shaped the choices that we have consumers, they shape the options that are there on the market. That is not the result of a free market being driven by profit incentives and consumer demand. There is a heavy hand of the state that has played a role in deciding exactly what has won out, what has the size of the marketplace that is out there. And that's something that if we're not constantly thinking about things from an economic lens, it's very easy to get caught into other diagnoses of this problem that can result in either further control, further additional issues that can make these problems even worse.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where, you have to realize that this is a downstream of a worldview problem too, because this is kind of a Tower of Babel attempt, right? In the sense that, the whole cultural adoption of seed oils as the new fat of the future was something that was kind of a hubristic desire to say, hey, look, we don't have to eat the natural fats that God created that our ancestors and grandparents ate, like butter and animal fat for cooking and for that kind of thing. Oh, we don't have to do that. We can create in a lab this toxic Frankenstein food, and we'll say that it's better, it's healthier, and we'll blame animal fats that people have been eating for thousands of years when they didn't have heart disease, they didn't have diabetes, they didn't have cancer like we do today. And we'll blame all of those diseases on the very things that didn't cause those things for thousands of years. But in fact, it was the Frankenstein attempt to kind of remake nature in our image for giant corporations that created this disaster of medical chronic diseases is skyrocketing. And also, as I pointed out on my program, having high amounts of the type of toxic linoleic acid, which is found in vegetable oils. Professor Bruce Davis of Bruce Hammock of UC Davis in California, he published a fascinating paper during the pandemic showing that those who had severe bouts of COVID in terms of acute respiratory distress were ones that had a high amount of linoleic acid built up in their body, which is the vegetable oil. So not only has the government subsidizing these toxic things done a horrible job on our health from a chronic disease standpoint, it's also set us up for extreme, inflammatory responses to the point of dangerous and death, like we had with these acute illnesses and infectious diseases. They also are contributing extremely amount of the mental health problems that we've seen skyrocket over the years. For example, they've shown studies that when you reduce the amount of omega-6 vegetable oil in the prison population, they're less aggressive, less violent, less antisocial in their behavior. So you can see whether it's depression. I know a friend of mine, Dr. Chris Palmer from Harvard Psychiatry, he has shown that, when you can reduce certain inflammations, including seed oils, that you can help reduce even things like schizophrenia and bipolar. How many more other mental health issues are being affected by this inflammation caused by these vegetable oils? We just begin to scratch the surface. One of the reasons why, of course, is because so much of government nutritional science, of course, is captured by special interests. So all the money, just like with Fauci, he's like a dictator that controls all the funding for his field of virology around the world. And if you cross his ideas, you're going to be canceled like the mafia don that he acts and tried to act like. Same thing goes on in things like nutrition science. If you're not actively pushing for the party line, which is plant-based oils, plant-based goop, and attacking things, and always looking for a new drug as the main solution for diseases, then, you're not going to get any funding for your research. There's no monetary flow of cash towards people who truly want to think independently and scientifically rigorous and let the facts go where they are. So that's what happens when the government monopolizes the funding of science and nutrition research, is that it's going to go towards things that can result in a patent rather than things which are scientifically proven to be the best solution or explanation for a disease or something of that nature.
Yeah, and that dangerous toxic combination of the politicalization of science, through, again, using basic incentives, right? If the majority of the funding comes from institutions and pools of money that directly has political ties, we should be surprised when the results of that research ends up benefiting whatever the political agenda of the day. I know this is a big issue that we have in the economic sphere, when the majority of economic research grants out there that are pools of funding for economists trying to do research about X, Y, and Z. The majority of those are handed out by the Federal Reserve, and so surprise, surprise, people advocating for, protecting or elevating the powers and abilities of the Federal Reserve to create new tools to manipulate credit and money in the system tend to do pretty well in that racket. Then, of course, you have this entire the other dynamic here is the way to which the propaganda aspect of the regime, there's no consequence really to being wrong. We could think about the old school FDA food pyramid, which recommended just a remarkably unhealthy diet of 11 servings of bread and pasta. Really diminishing the role that meat should play. The way that the dynamic to which these same in the mantle of science, the government promotes a certain narrative out there, selling it as fact that is then pumped into the public schools. It's pumped into all sorts of children's programming and things like that, where they're just going on what is being told. That goes a major way into also affecting the way that we as consumers view these products that are subsidized by these underlying government policies.
Yeah, for sure. And there's a lot of people who are trying to reverse that with regenerative agriculture. There's a friend of mine here in Hillsboro named Jason who has a farm called Regeneration Farms, and he's doing pasture-raised chicken eggs and meat chickens with his family, and they're doing great success at markets, and I think they sell online and stuff too. But he's following a method by a guy named Joel Salatin, another friend of mine who's in Virginia. He's considered to be the world's most famous farmer because of his very great successful farm he has in Virginia called Polyface Farms, where he's rotationally grazing in kind of a very well thought out method, chicken and cattle and turkeys. He's also got pigs in his ecosystem, and he's using all of these different animals to create this kind of synergistic return to nature, but still being able to manage it in a way that can create an opportunity for extreme successful farming.
Well, I want to talk more about some of these efforts and some of the ways that we can combat this Fiat food regime here on Good Money. So stay tuned on the other side of the break. We'll continue our conversation with David Gornoski here on Money Talk 1010. Welcome back to Good Money here on Money Talk 1010. I am your host, Tho Bishop. We are continuing our conversation right now with someone who knows how to think about the economy. That is David Gornoski, the host of A Neighbor's Choice, which can be found on Rumble, can be found on a variety of other podcast platforms. You can find him on his website, aneighborschoice.com. He has been a big on Tampa radio for quite some time as well. Someone who I always enjoy talking to. Someone you will not find a lot on YouTube, though, because of conversations like this that the censors do not like. And we have been talking about the Fiat food culture we have in this country, the incentives that have been out there that have distorted the agricultural environment that we're living in, affecting directly the choices that we have and the secondary consequences thereof, which goes into some of the conversations about medical costs and things like that. And one of the interesting things from an economic perspective, David, is that one of the measures that the Fed uses to inform us of inflation from an official lens rather than what we feel when we actually go to the store or to the gas pump is, they have this basket of goods and their consumer price index. And one of the tools that they use is that the bundle of goods can change with what they call substitute goods. So if you're replacing steak with hamburger, that price difference is factored into the inflation prices that are reported out there. And this goes into some of what we have been talking about, that incentives matter. People are going to respond to whatever their budget is, go to the store, make these decisions. And that's one of, I think that this has a tremendous amount of relevance into the way that governments that, look at the World Economic Forum types, those that have a very distinct interest in changing consumer behavior, the sort of agendas that they are pretty flagrant in talking about explicitly. One of the things that they've recognized is that if you simply make certain options on the table cheaper, people will naturally follow that signal and consume or adopt these cheaper alternatives out there. And really, what I find interesting, and this is something we've talked about a great deal, is that I think for the first time in a long time, the breakdown in trust in these institutions, which COVID definitely kicked off in a big way, but it's kind of been brewing under the surface a bit. Again, I could talk to my younger sister, who, someone who is not a very political person at all, but she is now very concerned. She's got a 1-year-old child, and so the way that her consumer choices, where she is very careful at looking at some of these underlying issues of seed oils and the like, her choices have differed just because she has become awakened to concerns about some of these larger dynamics at play. And so, David, do you think that this larger distrust of some of these larger institutions is reaching do you sense that this is something that people are kind of recognizing or are responding to in a broader way? So is there a positive dynamic here where, people are becoming more aware of some of the consequences of these government policies when it comes to the food supply?
Yeah, I really think that it's a staggering figure to wrap your head around, but based on the doctors and scientists that I've interviewed about the impact of vegetable oils over the last century in America, I think they're responsible for at least 90% of chronic diseases that we've had. Can you imagine that just for a moment? Like the heart diseases, the diabetes, cancer, Alzheimer's, dementia. If you did not have vegetable oils in our food system, like at least 90% of the occurrences of these various huge killers would have evaporated. Can you imagine what that would have done to this century if we had not gone on this toxic course that is still fully invested in our society? And the way it functions is they gaslight us into, and what happened, they gaslight us into, it's just another dietary thing to worry about. And what happens also is that because there are so many different toxic things in the food system, when you hear about it, you kind of put it into a basket of, that goes on the same basket as the food dyes and this thing and this filler and this food additive and MSG. It all kind of goes into the same thing that I should generally be aware of and be skeptical of. But no, the vegetable oil really is the gorilla in the room of all the diseases that we're having today. If you have someone you know who has heart disease, it was caused 90% chance by the vegetable oils. If you have someone, and that's the foundation of these diseases. It creates severe inflammation. All these different diseases that we are told, they're always looking for genetic solutions for them because that's where they can have endless research dollars flow to them. So like cancer is considered to be primarily a genetic disease. And that's where all the research dollars, whenever you go to the cancer research foundations and stuff and government grants, it's all about endlessly chasing after nuclear, things in the genetic code of humans to come up with immunotherapies that are extremely expensive, extremely profitable. But what about a different paradigm, which is where the great researchers, people like Dr. Michael Lasanti, who's one of the most highly researched and cited Google scholars, And that's for Google Scholars is just a website that holds together all the different scholars of all fields of knowledge. He's one of the highest cited scholars on Google Scholar. And Michael Lasanti, another friend of mine, he's the chair of translational medicine at Salford University in England. He's an American, though. But he has shown that cancer is a metabolic disease. That means it's a problem of your energy. And what's related to your energy? What you eat. So everything is about that. And so the number one thing you should first do is take all vegetable oils out of your life. When you go get that Publix sandwich, make sure you don't have vegetable oils in the bread or mayonnaise added on to the sandwich today for lunch. When you go to get your salad, chicken salad, well, check the ingredients. If it has vegetable oils in it or tuna salad, don't eat it. Okay? Get the tuna, get your own olive oil, and you can turn it into your own mayonnaise at home, and that'll be a much better option. Or they have avocado oil mayonnaise and stuff if you need that. But, that's the smart choices you're going to make right now, and you have to set that in motion. The worst type of vegetable oil is the fried, is the cooked, because it creates aldehydes on level with fat-smoking industrial cigarettes. So when you get Little Johnny, a little Happy Meal with chicken nuggets, fried in rancid seed oils, they're loaded with aldehydes and H&E, which is these are toxic byproducts on level with smoking cigarettes. So it's like picking up Little Johnny from school and throwing him a pack of cigarettes as soon as you get them. That's how toxic. It's, in fact, worse than that. So just think about that next time you go through the drive-thru where Little Johnny wants chicken nuggets and French fries fried in rancid seed oils. Say, hey, I got an idea. Let's get you 3 beef patties. If you want a little ketchup, we get that for you. Get you a drink. You know what I mean? And figure out other things that are alternative ways to give you, because children like beef patties. They're actually, the taste of beef, even at McDonald's, is sufficient to be very satisfactory to a child's taste, especially if you haven't inundated them with synthetic chicken nuggets as their palate. So that's the one thing. And the other thing is getting involved with your local regenerative agricultural community. Going back to what I said with Joel Salatin and the revolution that he's kickstarted with his Polyphase Farm, he's got several books that teach you how to farm, that teach you how to maximize and make a significant amount of profit, even off of small acreage like 20 acres.
Well, and that's the thing, is that in order to push back against a lot of this, it requires a lot of responsibility and self-ownership in this, and that's something that are values we need more of in society. So thank you, David, for everything you do. You can find him at neighborschoice.com.